everybody. This is Sean Kelly. Welcome to the What's New overview for Relativity Server version 11.1. Today, facilitating this training are Greg Houston from our solutions team, myself, Sean Kelly from the customer success law firm team, Eden Ijak from the customer success corporate team. Just please note that the Relativity continuing education credits are only offered for the live version of this webinar, which you're currently on. If you are currently logged in, RCE credits can take up to 1 week to be added. And we are going to get started here in just a moment. I see someone asked if Sean Kelly is a relative of Charlie Kelly. I am not. I have a lot of relatives, but none of them are named Charlie. Also, my last name is Kelly with an EY. So I don't have any relatives who are Kelly with no Y, or with no E, sorry. Just in order to communicate with us, please use the Q&A box. That's going to allow you to ask questions throughout the presentation. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation, and that's when we're going to answer all of those questions that you enter into the question box. If you have not already done so, please, I know a bunch of you did this already, so we can just, but if you could just type yes into the question box just to let us know that you can hear us and see the screen. You should see some slides of this presentation on the screen. You should also see a set of additional resources. You can click on these links and they will open up in a new screen. If you run into any technical issues during the webinar, please be sure to check out the attendee troubleshooting guide. And to begin the presentation, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Eden Ijak from the CSM Law corporate team.
Thanks, Sean. Sean, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
All right, wonderful. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our What's New overview presentation for Relativity 11.1. So we've added hundreds of new features and enhancements in the past few versions of Relativity. In today's discussion, I'm going to concentrate on the biggest changes to make sure you're aware of them. If you see something that you think is going to be important for your workflows and have a question, please throw it in the Q&A box. We will be addressing your questions at the end of today's presentation. Also, if you're interested in exploring any of these features in more detail with our solutions team, you can reach out to your customer success manager who can help coordinate a deep dive conversation. So I'd like to start off today by reiterating that Relativity Server remains a critical component of our strategy. We aim to deliver a highly reliable and stable solution that's easy for your infrastructure teams to maintain and that offers new features and functionality to our customers. Ideally, that continue to help streamline how you conduct e-discovery, innovate your practices, and deliver great results. In 2020, Relativity shifted the cadence of our releases for Relativity Server to an annual cycle. We made this change because 71% of our server customers upgrade their environment less than once a year, and 22% wait 2 years or longer to upgrade. So moving to an annual cadence ensures that we can achieve the stability we aspire to and aligns more closely to how most of our server customers work today. Our pillars for server include stability, delivering a stable, performant Relativity Server release with a commitment to fast resolution for product issues that arise. Simplified maintenance and updates. We aim to reduce stress for your infrastructure teams by making the product easy to maintain and ensuring compatibility with current operating systems, databases, frameworks, and browser technology. Feature enhancements. We continue to add features and functionality that optimizes all users' experience and amplifies the power of the platform overall. I want to start by calling out a few considerations that can impact upgrade planning or timing. This list is not entirely comprehensive. Your pre-upgrade technical call is intended to dig more into these items, but I want to give you as much notice for just a few changes. In Relativity Server 11.1, SQL 2014 and 2016 are no longer supported. SQL 2017 will continue to be supported, and 2019 is now supported. We've made this change for several reasons. First, Microsoft's standard support for SQL 2017 ends this July. The SQL grade experience continues to improve. Also, certifying SQL reinforces our commitment to keeping up with the latest and greatest versions of SQL. And last but not least, reducing our SQL footprint enables Relativity developers to accelerate product improvements and innovation. Something else to take into account when planning for an upgrade is whether or not you have any custom solutions such as scripts or applications. So you can download the solutions snapshot application from our documentation site at any time and run it in your environment. This will provide you with a status for each of your applications and scripts, so you know whether or not you might have compatibility issues. And if you have any custom scripts that trigger imaging jobs, our support team will provide instructions on how to adjust those prior to your upgrade. Jumping into the new functionality, we'll start off with review imaging and productions. So previously, making small changes to a production set was not always possible in Relativity. Now you can make changes to a production without compromising the Bates numbers or needing to rerun the full production. With the ability to reproduce documents, you can add or remove a small number of documents at the last minute before the production goes out the door. Remove or include documents based on coding changes or privilege designations. Overlay a new version of a produced document to reflect changes on redactions or content. Change a native file for a slip sheet while maintaining the original Bates number. And monitor the progress of these jobs and complete these actions on multiple productions simultaneously. So with this functionality, you can choose the modification you want to apply to the production document. Select the productions that you wish to modify. Please note that only productions that contain the selected document are available for selection. And voila, 5 clicks later, you have modified your production.
This is huge because it allows you to have what was a slip sheet before. There was no easy way to replace that with multiple pages previously. And on top of that, you can do it across multiple productions instead of doing individual productions to reproduce. So 2 really big time savers.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Okay, so introducing the document preview panel. The preview panel makes it easy to take a quick look at a document without the need for a full coding experience. So in this panel, you can quickly QC documents and production images, see a new set of documents after changing a search, and as part of investigative reviews, get a quick preview of a document before jumping into the core review interface. A few UX enhancements in 11.1. So previously, creating fields and choices was completed on 2 separate pages. With Relativity 11.1, you can create a field with choices from the same view. So this is more intuitive and reduces the number of clicks needed to complete this task. We're also making it easier to filter on specific fields. With this release, administrators can now create field categories to simplify finding and filtering on fields, which makes it easier to narrow in on the substance of the matter. Additionally, we've made improvements to the list page filter that make multi-choice fields easier to use and select. Prior to 11.1, users had to manually search for and apply all fields. Now, field categories are also available for views and saved searches. So users can select fields to display in a view or saved search, or select fields when applying conditions to a view or saved search. This helps users find the information they are looking for faster across additional areas of the platform.
We've seen clients group these by like processing type fields, metadata, threading fields. So it's easy to just jump into a particular grouping category and find, you can create subsets of fields that are of interest based upon what you might be trying to look for at that time.
We've also created more intuitive list filtering. So list filtering is faster than ever with usability enhancements in this release. We've adjusted the default setting away from pre-selected all, saving you clicks and some time.
And this seems like a minimal thing, but it was always that extra click to take away everything and then start selecting versus now it's not selected for you initially. So minor thing, but hopefully a time saver.
We'll take all the time we can get. So the short message filtering. The introduction of short message capabilities unlocked a type of data that was previously pretty difficult to work with. But reviewing short message data comes with its own set of challenges. Specifically, short message conversations can introduce thousands, or in some cases, millions of communications to a case and can result in a time-consuming workflow for both admins and users. To reduce the amount of content that needs to be reviewed, we are introducing short message filtering in 11.1. So with short message filtering, you can quickly and easily unlock the value of short message data to focus investigations by reducing the amount of content that must be reviewed, hone in on a critical action or participant with the click of a button, and sift through conversations, participants, event types, and date ranges with ease. A couple of considerations with the short message viewer. To take advantage of this functionality, your short message data must be converted to a new file format called Relativity Short Message Format, or RSMF for short, prior to processing into Relativity. This is a Relativity developed file format that encapsulates normalized short message data. And you have the option of converting the short message files yourself or using a third party to assist with the conversion. And we have detailed documentation on our website that walks through the RSMF conversion process, as well as development partners if needed. And with that, I will pass it back to Sean. So I'm going to end my screen share and hand it over to you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Eden. Let me know when the screen has changed. I think while we're waiting, Greg, do you want to, are there any questions that kind of jumped out at you from what's in there right now?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. One with regards to the productions. When you reproduce, you are going to have a suffix added if you didn't have the same page number of pages. So if you went from a slip sheet to adding the images, it's going to use that Bates number and a suffix, correct? And then another question around field categories. Can a field be in multiple categories? Yes, it can. So you could have a field that is like, let's say the email, like email from field could be part of processing fields, and it could be email fields. So you can have it be as many as you want.
All right. Thanks, Greg. We're going to have lots of time for questions at the end. So feel free to keep adding those to that Q&A box. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about some changes to PDF creation, starting with PDF application installation. So we are introducing a new PDF application that is intended to replace the legacy save as PDF functionality, which includes the mass save as PDF operation from the document list and the save as PDF on the fly operation from the viewer. The new PDF application has new features such as new PDF profile, a new progress bar, error reporting, and new naming options. Additionally, the new PDF application runs on agents, and that's going to eliminate the problem of having PDF jobs queued behind a processing or imaging job. It's important to notice that PDF jobs can no longer be managed or prioritized in a queue as they were with the worker manager. And these are just some information about that new functionality. So you can use the PDF profile to customize how to convert images and produced images into PDFs. To create a new PDF profile, you simply go to the PDF profile tab or use the quick search to find this tab. The new PDF mass operation option allows you to convert multiple documents into PDFs by selecting the documents you want to convert from the mass operations bar on the document list. The PDF application has a progress bar where you can see the status of your job, the number of documents completed, percentage completed, and the total duration of the job from start to completion. The progress bar will show the following status. Creating, so that will tell you that your PDF job is being created and added to the queue. Picked up, your PDF has been picked up from the queue. In progress, your PDFs are being created. Packaging, all PDFs were created, and now the zip file or the portfolio file is being created and completed. The job is complete. If the job completes with errors, you're going to have the option to download a CSV file with a list of those errors. So for example, if you try to create a PDF for a native file that is password protected, or if you try to create a PDF from images and a document doesn't have images, those PDFs will not be created and those documents are included in the CSV error file. And this is just a little bit more information about the PDF application. The new PDF application is not required. You can decide whether to install it or not. Installing it will replace your current Save as PDF feature with that new PDF application. If you're interested in using the application, it does need to be installed as a wrap file, just like any other Relativity application. And with the rollout of that new application, we are ending support for the legacy Save as PDF functionality for Server 2021.
But I want to emphasize it is the same option. So whereas you used to have options when you chose the mass option, now those are in the profile. So instead of having to go through and check all those boxes individually each time, let's say you're doing it 10 times by choosing different, now you've got a profile to choose instead of having to go through and individually check all those boxes and make those selections. But it's the same options and the same functionality is available. It's just how you go about it. So you haven't lost any functionality in this process.
Awesome. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about some changes to visualizations and analytics, starting with my favorite, structured analytics. Just love structure. So structured analytics job queuing is going to save your users time by allowing them to kick off multiple SAS workloads across their instance and within workspaces without risking the jobs overrunning each other. This is going to reduce the strain on workspace SQL tables, potentially increasing workspace performance in things like processing and doc-to-doc review. And it's going to reduce the load on your analytics infrastructure, reducing your failure rate and increasing performance. A change that we've made to active learning is we have introduced family-based review. So you now have the option to keep families, such as emails and attachments, together so you can meet any review protocol need that might come up. It's very simple for a project administrator to turn on family-based review. In the review queue card, they can add reviewers as they do today. There is a toggle now to enable family-based review. When enabled, the only input is the relational field. So for a reviewer, nothing changes with how they review documents in the active learning queue. When they begin, the parent of the family is served up first. Then when a reviewer clicks save and next, The children documents are served up, allowing the reviewer to review family documents in a logical order.
And it is key that they still review these on an individual basis. So if you wanted to have a separate field to indicate that you're coding as a family, that's fine. But to train the system, it's looking at individual by record file. So even though the family comes out in the same, is served up together, you're not going to code it as one block necessarily if those individual items don't match up accordingly. But it helps with privilege coding. If you want to do some privilege coding, you can have as many fields as you want in the layout. Go ahead and code appropriately for that, and take care of all the business around that family at one point in time. Just make sure that you code appropriately based on the individual items.
Thanks, Greg. So moving on, another change that we have made to active learning is we've provided transparency into the relevance rate by adding in a few columns that support the calculations. So now project admins and senior attorneys can trust and understand the accuracy of the metric. So we've got one column that's going to correspond to the denominator, the highest ranked documents, one column that shows the numerator, the highest ranked that are coded positive. And finally, we added a column, index health, which are the documents that have been excluded from the calculation. These columns sit to the left of the relevance rank for an intuitive understanding of the metric. Moving along, we have some changes to platform, including application library enhancements. So as we work to improve the user experience for our Relativity system admins, we're making improvements that will increase the speed and accuracy of the application install process. So with 11.1, you now have the ability to install applications to all workspaces with the click of a button to eliminate the time-consuming process of individually selecting workspaces across an instance. We'll zoom in and take a closer look at that. We've also made some other improvements to the platform. The Object Manager API is the most used API within the Relativity ecosystem. When developers need to improve functionality or resolve bugs, this often causes breaking changes to other ADS applications that are accessing Object Manager features. You can apply the API versioning reference architecture to, or we have applied the API versioning reference architecture to the Object Manager so that any future bug fixes for improvements will no longer break and disrupt our development community, reducing breaking changes for our development partners by 98%. This is going to allow Relativity developers to have confidence on improving the API without fear of causing disruptions. External developers will now have the ability to create and maintain their own Kepler REST APIs, REST. Adding or deleting users or groups now generates an email to notify system admins the underlying operation was completed successfully. However, the customer or you don't currently have the ability to toggle notifications off if desired. Now you can select the instance level setting to remove noise from auto-generated emails, especially when large amounts of users are created. We have added copy search terms reports, so you can now copy an existing search terms report. The mass action allows you to copy one or more search terms reports, which includes the settings and terms. Second, we're introducing support for incremental build support, saving you a ton of time. Your index builds will be even faster and will make administering Relativity even easier. We have, next up, we have a change that we have made to data grid. So when a Relativity instance does not support SMTP emailing capabilities, users who are just created by an administrator and are required to change their password on their next login attempt would receive, in the past, a confusing error message and not know if their password was successfully changed. This caused support calls to our clients. We have improved this user change password experience in the new version of Relativity so that it will be sort of less confusing and cause fewer issues. We have made a change to Relativity transcripts. So as of 11.1, transcripts now supports syncing logic from widely used synchronization tools in the industry, starting with Timecoder Pro. Next up, we have an improvement that we have made to case dynamics. So Case Dynamics will now auto-save when linking new objects, which is going to save you clicks in the software. With this release, we've also improved Case Dynamics performance across the entire product. So for anyone who's been using Case Dynamics, you should notice some improvement changes in performance as you go forward with the tool post-upgrade. And finally, I'd like to discuss a change to Relativity's API. Before we jump in, I just want to go through some key definitions. So we have two different sets of APIs that can look very similar on the surface. So I just want to make sure we are very clear. RS API can take many different names. Our entire legacy API surface is scheduled for removal. Kepler is a big focus. So if anyone is wondering if an endpoint is Kepler or RS API, the Relativity documentation site has been updated so that all RS API pages have a banner, and that's going to make it clear, which is which. We're constantly working to improve the development experience on Relativity, including modernizing and delivering a comprehensive API surface. Over the past 2 years, we've introduced dozens of new RESTful APIs, allowing for more extensibility across the platform. To continue to deliver a modern framework, we will begin deprecating Relativity Services APIs endpoints later this year. The more modern RESTful framework will allow the following benefits: improve discoverability and transparency, reduce downtime, and cloud-native capabilities to deliver a more advanced feature set. Finally, this is just kind of some information that will be included with this presentation. How to get started building a migration plan. This is something that we can and will go into in more detail on an individual as needed basis. So if you're interested in sort of this part of data analytics and project planning, contact your Relativity customer success manager, and they can connect you with the right people to build out your plan. We do have just some additional slides with some additional information that I'll show here briefly, just so you can kind of get a sense of how this is going to affect your RS APIs for people using those. And also, we will include an API roadmap on here as well for your reference. Finally, we have the Q&A portion. So I'm going to turn things over now to Greg Houston, who will be able to hopefully answer any and all questions that have come in.
Yeah, we've had quite a few questions, so let me go through these kind of in the order that they appeared. We have a question about, can Server 2021 process a Cellebrite image directly for RSMF? So the key with RSMFs is that they are created outside of Relativity. So this RSMF file type is created prior to it actually coming in. And then the key is after it becomes an RSMF file, it processes just like a Word doc or an MSG or a PST or any kind of file type. There's not a whole lot of, you just point your processing set to the data in a folder or to the individual file and bring it in, and Relativity knows what to do with it. But the key is making that RSMF initially. And a Cellebrite image isn't automatically an RSMF file. There are ways to create with Cellebrite RSMF files so that when they export out of Cellebrite, they're RSMFs at that point. But it's that key piece there. We do not have any tool or functionality to create RSMFs outside of Relativity. We are with Collect right now. If you collect in Relativity 1, we are creating RSMFs on that side from the collection of like Slack, and we will from Teams data. But there's nothing currently with regards to an outside tool outside of Relativity that creates the RSMF files. When you're talking about the RSMF filtering, is it possible to create images based off of the filter? It is not possible at this time. So when you create an image of the RSMF, it's still at this point going to bring the whole thing in. What will be happening down the road is the ability to slice it so that you can, it won't necessarily be the filter from the names or the searching standpoint, but be able to slice an RSMF in certain locations and then image that segment will be the next step in that, but that's not available currently. There is a big message here. I think this is going to require an email with regards to support for Windows 2016 and stuff, so we'll get to that later. So we have a lot of questions still about the production. When reproducing, can we set the priority for the productions? No, it just becomes it becomes a production set at that point. So, you know, you can see your production sets. I guess you can kind of in that way see, but no, there's not really a prioritization of those. Categories, field categories can be part of your template, and we are releasing, there are some templates out there with field categories. But yes, definitely, that is something that we would encourage you to do if you're creating or if you want to update your template with different field categories. We have some documentation as to how we've updated some of our templates in Relativity 1, and it might be useful for you to think about. What we've kind of done is think about from a standpoint of what's the different types of file fields that we want to look for. Sometimes it's about email threading, so we've grouped like an email threading group. Sometimes it's about processing metadata. Sometimes it's around just like we have like quick search, key search fields. So we know people like primary date, they want the unified title, they want email from, email to. So some of those basic, what are like the top 10 search fields that people use oftentimes? So that's a category in itself. And then you probably need to educate your users. The key thing that I would say, if you're going to use these categories, is that then users sometimes, you can default to a certain category, and then users who aren't educated about it will by default look like they don't have fields. And so they're limited to whatever field category is the lowest order, and then they go in to go do their standard searching or go about their day like they normally do, and they're not going to see all the fields. And so just make sure that you get them used to that and make sure they understand where they can switch or toggle to see all the fields if they really want them. So can we reproduce one document out of a total production set of 100 documents? How will it affect numbering? So yes, you can. I mean, this is going to be an individual. You can just check the box next to, so you don't have to create a safe search for it. You just check the box and then hit reproduce as a mass operation. If that one has a Bates number already, so it's not going to, I mean, you can choose, there's a few different options with numbering actually. So depending upon what you're doing, if it's the same number of pages, obviously we're going to assume that you want the same number, the same page numbers. If it's a different number of pages, then we might have to either do a suffix or we're just going to take the first page. So if you're going from a 10-page document to a slip sheet, it's just going to be like the first Bates essentially. But if you're doing the opposite, then yes, you'll have to do a suffix. Questions about searchable PDF. So one of the things people want now to see the searchable PDFs in the RDC. So the RDC is not going to create searchable PDFs for you. However, the new PDF tool does allow you to have the PDFs are stored separately, and then you can actually download the searchable version. So it's kind of another way to get to that same information. And once again, you always have the option to do the mass operation. You've got a profile, and you can make searchable PDFs from that profile. Will mass PDF have prefixes and suffixes? I'm not sure why it would necessarily. It's going to be based off of the numbering. So it doesn't really give you a new numbering scheme for the PDFs at that point. So when you have the format of the short messages, I'm sorry I'm bouncing around here back and forth a little bit, just kind of taking the messages that come, the questions that come. With regards to the new function, how does it affect the original metadata of the message? So the key thing here with the RSMF file is that when you create that RSMF file, it's taking, and there's actually a page, I just want to emphasize, there are directions and there is a whole document that talks through how to create the RSMF. So if you wanted to create that, you could do so. It's a little tedious on an individual basis, which is why, you know, if you had 500 messages, there's no way that you could do it. I mean, you could typically, I mean, technically you could create 500 of them, but just the process itself is a little tedious. So therefore, I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world. But it's taking, think about like a load file with like metadata fields that are updated, and then another field, another file that's the maybe the message itself. And we're kind of wrapping all that together in a package. And that package is the RSMF. Whatever metadata is populated in that RSMF file is what's going to carry through to the workspace. So it's not changing any of the information. However, there is the tool could, you know, create whatever metadata it wanted to for those, for that information, honestly. But the goal here is that RSMF, and if you're missing, there are times we have seen where RSMF files are missing data, and so therefore it doesn't translate to the viewer, and so you're missing that information. And it kind of comes back to how the RSMF was created. So that's just something to be aware of and think about. So the PDF wrap file, it does have to be updated. And the reason we're doing that, making sure that you manually update it, is because we want to make sure that people are aware of the functionality and understand and get comfortable with it. From the other standpoint, though, you do have the ability now with the application installer, so you could install it to every workspace at once if you wanted to. So by all means, feel free to, I mean, it's not a tedious workspace by workspace install process. You can install it to all the workspaces at one time. With regards to active learning, if the attachment is the most responsive document, will be served up before the parent email. It will not, and we don't really have an indicator to show at this point in time which one the system finds to be the most responsive. That was definitely a consideration as to, you know, which one was served up first. Did we serve up the most responsive first? And at the end of the day, most clients said they wanted to have, you know, people want to review stuff in the order based on the parent, you know, the email itself, and then the attachments. It's difficult to see the attachment first and then the parent. So that's why they're served up in that order, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the email is the responsive document or the most responsive of that group. So once again, I just want to encourage you to, if you turn that feature on, you still have to educate your reviewers to review individually the items. You know, so coding, you know, the attachment might be the responsive one, but the email might be non-responsive. It's really important to train the system effectively on what is responsive so that it knows, and not group something in just because it's attached to something else. And with that in mind, you do have the ability to edit your layout, maybe having, and what we've seen most recently is a new field that would be responsive based on family. And so while you still can do some searches at the end to say, hey, this item is responsive and here's all the family that goes with it, I'm going to produce it regardless, it does allow you to just kind of, if somebody's looking at things, check a box to kind of like have that verification that I'm marking this item, I want to mark it as responsive for production, just so that we know that it's all done based on the grouping and not the individual item. So something to consider. Can you run one reproduction that includes documents from many previous productions that preserves the base number? Yes, that is one of the new functions. So if your productions, you know, previously you reproduced, it was just based on an individual production basis. Now you have the ability to, it's just to choose checkbox by checkbox individual email messages or items. I shouldn't say necessarily, may not be messages, but items, and then reproduce, and it'll based off of the original base. So yes, you can create across baits, across production sets, new production items. Does the Save as PDF application still use the invariant and goes to the same queue manager? No, it does not. That's one of the benefits of having the new PDF tool, is that you're not sharing agents with invariant. So you are, it's offloading those tasks. So you don't have to necessarily have that get clogged up by invariant processing a bunch of jobs at the same time. The new PDF installer is per workspace, not instance. So, but you can, as I said before, install across the workspace, across the instance. So you can choose all your workspaces and have it installed all at once and be set to go. There is not currently a way. Somebody's asking if field categories can be updated on existing workspaces. Like, is there a mass option? I don't believe that is an option to. I don't know if you could update an application is what I think would be the plan, but that is not currently an option that I know of. I'll verify that, but I don't think so at this time. And will there be a PDF per family export feature? No, it's the PDF is an individual item basis. So whatever you choose, if you just have to key with that, would just be to make a good safe search that includes the family, so that whenever you create your PDFs, that it does that based on that grouping. Now, there is not a way to limit the page count of the new PDF creation. It's just going to bring over whatever is there. And there's not a max change, and there's not a way to change the maximum DAP count for the mass PDF. Is there any documentation on the what's new? We do have, there is a what's new on the documentation side. If you go to towards the left-hand side, there should be a what's new listing there that kind of helps you walk through these. Just make sure you choose server 2021, and that should give you the list of what's available. And somebody's asking why you can't tally on STR fields or select them from the filter list. That's because they are object fields, which is a little more problematic based on the multiple items that can connect to it. And we're getting towards the end of our questions. There are some questions that I didn't answer just based on the length of them and kind of the relationship to others, sort of related to questions we already answered. Which server carries the load when creating thousands of PDFs? So that's going to be the worker server that you associate with that PDF. So kind of depends on how you have your system set up, but it's not going to necessarily be the invariant server. All right. Well, that's most of the questions. There are quite a few questions still about what, future plans and asking about features to come. I didn't answer some of those, what's new, what's coming, just based on the fact that I don't want to speculate on what I think is probably in the pipeline at this point in time, what I've heard, and what actually might be there. We will go ahead and I'll probably answer some of these questions offline directly, so that there's some of these are more of a conversation, I think, than we want to get into over the webinar. And hi, everybody that has said hello, and good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This is Sean again. For any of those questions about like future plans and stuff like that, always feel free to get in touch with your customer success manager, and they might be able to help direct your questions to the right place. Especially if you have questions about plans for future features, or you have future features that you'd like to see, ideas for improvements and things like that. The CSM team is always helpful. Glad to help direct those to the appropriate parties. I think with that, we can close out the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you to Eden and Greg and the whole team here for doing the presentation. And I'd like everybody to have a great day.
And we did have some questions about will this be available. Yes, this video will be posted online and be available to watch the full thing again later. It should be posted, I think, on the from the main page, main relativity page.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and have a great one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.